Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody in between, welcome to another episode of the Chaps Chat Cats, a part of the Hoops Crew Media Network. My name is Jake, and I'm joined in the virtual studio by Sambo and Johnny. Come on down.
Hello.
How are we, chaps?
Good.
Pretty good.
Sorry, did I break your programming there by saying just come on down instead of like, how are you guys? How are you, chaps?
Yeah.
Through your
Yeah.
curveball.
I didn't know what I was meant to do. I'm like, well, I'm here already. I'm seated. I can't really come any more than I already am, Jake.
All right. We've got a lot to get to on the show tonight. The Cats v Blues round 15 recap. I'm sure you can't wait to discuss this one, Sambo. I'm sure the listeners and the viewers can't wait for us to get into it. None of us can wait. We're all just itching to relive Friday night between the Cats and the Blues. And that's what we're going to do on the public part of the show. Then we are going to duck behind the Patreon curtain, and we're going to do a bit of the Chaps Chat Stats. We're going to talk about the development of some of Geelong's young guns, a couple in particular. I've pulled out some stats on, but it'll probably be a broader discussion than that too. So if you want to hear or watch that part of the program, then please sign up to the Hoops Crew Patreon. Start your 7-day free trial today. Extended early access bonus stuff up the wazoo. But let's get into it, chaps. Before we get into it, there's one last little piece of business that we have to conduct. And that is to say a big old thank you to Valhalla Brewing, the network sponsor of the Hoops Crew. You got to get along to the Brew Hall in North Geelong. It's the opposite of South Geelong. You go north on the compass to get to the Brew Hall in North Geelong. The CBD. Do you know what that is, chaps? The CBD, that's the Central Business District, I believe. That's what it stands for, of Geelong. Go to the tap room. If you're there, sample some of the fine liquid remedies of Valhalla Brewing, the sponsor of the Hoops Crew Media Network, and we thank them for their sponsorship. Chaps, let's get into it. Let's prepare to take our medicine as we review Cats v Blues. The Cats going up to the MCG, as Sam aptly put it. We welcomed the Blues to our home ground, the MCG, the first time around. Yep. They welcome us to their home ground, the MCG, this time. And chaps, it was an interesting one. It didn't look good early. 3 goals in the space of 7.5 minutes to the Blues, and they looked absolutely on fire. However, the Cats, through Zach Toohey and Max Holmes, shot back. The Cats were sort of back in the mix. Blues kicked the last 2 goals of the quarter, and that put it out to 33-14. But look, it had been a rough opening term. There was some bits to like. Steady the ship at quarter time. Come out, get in the contest. That's what the Cats did. First 2 goals of the second quarter. Ollie Dempsey after 1.5 minutes. Jeremy Cameron, 4 minutes and 20 seconds. The lead was back down, near that sort of 10-point sort of mark, and the Cats well in it. Thought, here, we're in for it. We're up for it. Unfortunately, it went south pretty much the rest of the evening, apart from one stretch in the third term. I mean, the third term was actually relatively even, but the second quarter was Mackay, Curnow, Akers, Owies. Who else do we have? Mackay and Owies again. They all kicked goals. 6 in a row to end the first half. That blew Carlton's lead out to 11-5-71 to 5-5-35. 6-goal lead. Though actually, the Cats did get a late one. I forgot about that. Jeremy Cameron snagged one back. Otherwise, it would have been a 7-goal lead. There's some controversy about that. Geelong, a couple of early behinds in the third quarter, both to Jeremy Cameron. Of course, Chincotta goes and gets a goal for the Blues. They miss a flurry of shots. The Cats kick 3 in a row to end the third quarter. De Koning, Rowan, and Close get the Cats within 4 goals, but then unfortunately it all went wrong in the final term. The Blues kicking 9 goals to Geelong's 3 to run out 138 to 75 victors. The result here, as I said, 11-9-75 the Cats, 21-12, 138 the Blues. Cameron kicks 3 goals, 3. Myers, 1 goal, 2. Stengel, 1 goal, 1. For the Blues, it was Curnow, 5 goals, 2. Owies, 3 goals, 1. Mackay, 3 goals straight. The Cats, Dempsey with 25 disposals. Holmes with 24. Myers with 23. And for the Blues, Cripps had 41. Walsh, 33. Kennedy, 31. Sambo, going to hand pass to you first off here. What were your general sort of thoughts and takeaways, your opening statement as the Cats suffer their 6th loss in 7 games?
Game over, man. It's game over.
Game over. Yeah. I apologize. I'm slightly distracted by some hooligans shouting outside.
Oh, fun.
Carlton fans coming to interrupt our podcast.
Yeah.
Of course. Nothing better to do.
My overall thoughts on the game, I guess, is, and I haven't done too much thinking about. I did some intensive thought on it directly after that evening and the day after, and then I've kind of put it to bed for the last few days and haven't thought about it as much. So I definitely don't feel as raw about it. But I think it's probably up there with the 2 most disappointing losses of the year for me. Next to the Gold Coast one, and probably slightly adjacent, slightly ahead of the Gold Coast one, actually, because the Gold Coast one was just felt like an anomaly. Felt like a really weird, there was the Darwins of it, and just one of those games where you're like, all right, let's put that one to bed and move on. And then there's been other losses that have been frustrating with those, like, kind of like, oh, if we could have done this, if we could have done that, if this had gone our way, could have been a bit more effective, could have kicked that goal, blah, blah, blah. That's frustrating in its own way. But I said to you guys, maybe halfway through the game, where I was kind of like, I just want us to fire a shot. Like, I don't care if we don't win this one, like, we're up against it. But like, I'd really like to see us come out and give them a scare, give Carlton a good scare, and they have to work for it. And it kind of looked like we were going to, but in my opinion, I don't think we really did. I don't think we ever really, in any way, looked like we were playing our game. We weren't even playing an alternative version with any real degree of proficiency. I think we kept getting some goals on the board with some sort of freak efficiency inside 50, really. I mean, the first quarter was like 5 inside 50s for 3 goals or something. Like we were, like we were operating at a pretty high level of efficiency, but it never looked like our game style. I think you could tell from really early on that whether it was their pressure, their physical pressure, or the pressure of the moment getting to our players, and our guys really over handballed it, in my opinion. I think we're up like 12 handballs on our average handballs for this year. And I felt like that really impacted because we weren't disposing of it in a way to give ourselves a mark and a chance to look. It was this kind of, I'm under pressure, so I'm going to get rid of it and directly put the next player under pressure. We saw some things that looked really bad on, sometimes looked really bad on Stewart, Jack Henry, Colin Jasny, but it was often you could track the issue back a couple of disposals to where we started handballing it into dangerous areas, and so then someone got caught holding the ball or turned it over because they should never have been given the ball in the first place. So there's a lot of that, just a lot of pressure, a lot of missed kicks. Even some of the people that I think played reasonably well, some of the people I have in my votes, I don't think played their best. They were some of the team's best, but I don't think they were playing their best. So I did, yeah, this game did really bum me out in terms of Carlton were the better team of the night. Good on them. But it just didn't feel like we ever really got out of second gear. But that being said, it's, it's not doom and gloom for me as far as the season, as far as the Cats in general. It's a, it's a bit of a funk, and it was a it was a pretty funky loss. But yeah, that's kind of my general rambling thoughts.
Johnny?
Yeah, Sam's general rambling thoughts are sort of similar to what I was thinking as well. Very, probably as Sam said, it was probably one of the more disappointing losses that we've had this year, alongside the Gold Coast game, where it just didn't really seem like they got out of that second gear or fired many shots, really. And there was just a lot of mistakes made, and a lot by like players that you wouldn't expect to make those poor decisions in crucial moments, or not even crucial moments, just in really silly spots to make a decision. A few players just weren't performing at a level that they should be or would be happy with either as well. But I still think a lot of the young guys were the best players of the night, like Max Holmes, Ollie Dempsey, Zach Guthrie, O'Shea Mullen, Jai Clark, Atkins. I still think they played really well. But when you got those very few young guys playing at the best that they can play at this point in time under massive amounts of pressure, and they're the only ones that are really putting that best foot forward for the whole game. They're not going to be able to turn the tide against a well seasoned, well drilled, pretty well written Blues outfit that have working really well together. It's like going up against the Swans, sort of, well, not like the Swans because we've played really well, but yeah, just come up against a team that are very focused. They know what they're here to do. They're going out to win, and they come up against the Cats that just struggling a bit. And I was talking to some guy I know, and that's talking about the Cats are playing not the best, but also I said it's luck as well. Like there's so many moments in the game where it's not like bad umpiring decisions or not marking the balls. It's just those bounces of the ball when there's a contest happening, and for some reason, no matter what, just seems either bounce the Carlton way or just Cats players aren't able to pick it up or grip it, or they slip over at a really bad time. And a lot of times it is because Carltons have got those players around to support and pick up that ball when it does bounce weirdly. But the main one that stuck in my mind is, I think it was like Charlie Kernow's third or second goal. He was running alongside the 50-yard with the ball with, I think it was O'Connor and even maybe Mullen behind him, like surrounded by two Cats. And somehow the ball just bounced straight up into his arm and ran away and kicked the goal. It's like, how does that happen? That's not skill on Kernow's side. That's just pure luck of the way the ball bounced. Did not favour the Cats, favoured Carlton. I feel like that's what happened a lot as well. Just the luck's not going the Cats' way, and on top of that, they're not playing the best football. They're not well connected at the moment either. They're very disjointed, it feels like. And when you do come up against a team that's well connected, bit of luck's on their side, well skilled, it's not going to be good. But as Sam said, it's not doom and gloom. It's not the end. It's not going to be a finals missing defeat. There's still plenty of time to make it up. There's still plenty of time to work out what's going on. But yeah, I don't think it's not doom and gloom. It's not the end of the season. The Cats can still turn this around and find a way. It's just not happening at the moment, and it's just a bad run of form.
A thought that I had immediately after the game was around depth. I feel like maybe depth. Yeah. The last 2 months, I reckon, I think I'm trying to work out how I phrase this without sounding like I'm being really negative, and I definitely don't mean it in a really negative or like depressed kind of way. But I just think we've been shown, I think right now, where Geelong is at in terms of list, in terms of development, in terms of all that stuff, like in a lot of facets. I don't think we have as much depth as we did 2 or 3 seasons ago. Now that's obvious in terms of the players who have gone, the players who have departed. It's obvious in terms of players, getting 2 or 3 seasons older. But I also think that something you lose when those players go is the depth of like resilience of what you've got to tap into. Like there were teams, and I wanted to actually go back and look at some of the teams from Geelong during that period where we didn't win a flag, from say like 2012 through to 2021. Those years where we're up and about, but we never really we didn't get over the line. And something that was amazing in that time is how many prelims we made our way back to. That always stuck out to me. It's like, how do they keep fronting up and finding the hunger and finding the drive? And that, you're down by 5 goals and you work your way back into it and you kick another last minute winner and you're winning. Like we talked about Joel Selwood. I can't remember who I was talking to. I think it was Jack from Marcus Up Pod, or formerly of the Marcus Up Pod. Joel Selwood lost something like 14 games at Cardinia Park in his entire career. Like, that's insane. And I just think that there's lots of areas in which we are going through a bit of a reset. And there's players out there who are learning how to drive their own standards. That was something I sort of noticed a bit the other night. Was there was some times where I wasn't really happy with some of the efforts when the ball was in play. And you don't want to single anyone out, but unfortunately sometimes there are individual moments that stand out that encapsulate it. But Sambo, you talked about, and I hope you don't mind me bringing it up, but I agree with your point. Sam De Koning getting stuck into his brother when the play wasn't on. They'd get into a wrestle or he'd go up to him after the a quarter time siren and have a go at him, and there's a bit of push and shove and words. And it's like, can we please channel that when the ball is in play? Can we please bring that fire and aggression and attack during the actual match when it matters, when we can impact the result? And I think to Sam De Koning's credit, he did that a lot more in the second half. But I don't know about you, chaps. I just think I'm not doom and gloom. I think that we can still make finals. I think, I would say though, I feel I'm at peace with, I feel that our next premiership team is a couple of seasons away.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. But I
I'm
don't
fine with
mean
that.
to be doom and gloom. I'm not saying that it can't happen earlier than that or anything like that. But I just look at the development. Like, people are saying, we need to bring guys up from the VFL. I watched the VFL on the weekend. There's some really good players in the VFL, and most of them need another 12 months of development. People talk about, oh, yeah, the Cats have been found out. If a team like Carlton that has been pumped flush with first round picks after years of sucking butt at the bottom of the ladder can't eventually find a way to cobble together a premiership winning side and beat Geelong, then there's something wrong with what they're cooking. Like, the Cats have existed on mid-round picks for years, and now it's come to a time where Selwood's gone, Dangerfield's at the end, Hawkins is towards the end, etc. And there's some development time required for the next generation. We can't currently. We've done a pretty good job of papering over the gaps. I don't know. I feel myself. I don't know. You guys
I
take
was
from
thinking
there.
about
That's
this
my ramblings.
very, very thinking about this very thing this morning or during work, about, seeing a lot of people talking about this very thing, like going, oh, it's over. The journey's done. we're 2007 to such and such. And it's all over. It's all done. It was fun while it lasted, but we're at the end now. It's like, well, we're at the end in 2022 when we won the grand final, and we talked about it. We said, "There's a book done. It's now time for the new one." So, in terms of knowing that we may struggle for a bit, and we're going to struggle to find that new generation of players because as you said, Jack, Dangerfield's that is not far away from going. Sells is gone. Um, Isaac Smith is gone, and we talked about this. The chapter, the book's done. That era's all over. It's time for a new one. And I was trying to think of who's the next player that can take us to the next premiership. And I was saying the first player that came straight to my mind was Max Holmes. It was like Max Holmes is that next player to pick up the mantle when he's ready to lead the Cats into the future, alongside Dempsey, Jai Clark, Zach Guthrie, and a few others in this Toby Conway as well. And I thought, well, if these are guys that are next ones who are going to take the Cats to the next premiership, then I'm fine waiting around. I'm fine going through this tough time of struggling to win a
6.
game. 8-6. It's really tough. It's devastating. I don't know how we're going to survive through this. And I was like, well, it's not going to be that tough. It's going to be pretty easy because they're not far away from finding their best form. And the way Dempsey was playing on the weekend, he's just got to, he just needs development over. He just needs games experience to work out how to play AFL at that level consistently. Like he's consistently good. He just needs time to fill in the gaps alongside Max Holmes and Jai Clark, Oisin Mullen, or Toby Conway, all these players that are coming up. They just need time. And if we've got to suffer around the middle of the table for a couple of years, then that's fine by me. And if people don't want to jump off the bandwagon and jump off, you don't deserve to be around when the times are good if you're not willing to stick around while the times are slightly less good.
Sambo, I can see you've got thoughts.
I have a lot of thoughts. I tend to I see where you're both coming from. I do. I don't tend to look at it that way myself. I think my particular brand of fandom and watching is just assuming that next week's going to look different, and we're gonna because like
which
it
I always
could.
think like that as well.
Which you could, and then
Yeah.
and I've spoken about this before. I think it's it's a delusion that I think the Geelong Cats' success has afforded me that I don't seem that crazy. I'm not so crazy to think that it might turn around this year, but it's still a degree of crazy, and I don't know. I don't enjoy watching football with that in mind of going look, this is gonna be a tough couple of years, or like I think we've this is where we're at, this is like I just don't, but I totally see the justifications behind it. The other thing that I do think that is still keeping me on this bit of buoyancy is that an example of how good the Cats can play isn't that far removed. It's not that long ago. It's not even and it's not even looking at 2022. It's not even looking at some of the best parts of 2023. It's like 7 games ago. Like and
Yep.
this is where I guess it depends, Jake, as far as depth, how you define depth, like depth of the players we've got and their ability, or like depth of experience, like a depth of a tool set, I think is something that I can relate to more in terms of it's like a quiver of arrows, I suppose. And I feel like maybe in the first half of the year we were hitting every first shot with our arrow from the quiver, and then it's we've had to adjust a couple of times, and it turns out maybe we only maybe we only had 3 arrows in that quiver for the players, for the squad. So I don't mean like players, like we don't have enough players, don't have enough good players out there, but the good players that we've got just haven't got that depth of experience to draw upon to go, oh, we're going through this thing now, so we can fall back upon plan C or plan D. It's kind of like our plan A was still really, really good. And I just don't buy the argument of, oh, he didn't play anyone in the top 8. You didn't play these people. Form changes. We played Carlton. You know, we did beat Carlton. I know Carlton's form has improved, but if you're going to allow that Carlton's form has improved, you've got to allow that our form has decreased. That it's not, we weren't the same team that ran out. Structurally, personnel wise, we're a very similar team. Like that's the thing that I think it's the people that sort of say, oh, it's just who you played. I think that's highly um disrespectful to the other teams, because the thing that bums me out, but is actually a positive in a weird way, is that if we played the way we played against Carlton this weekend, against any of those 7 teams that we beat at the start of the year, I think we'd be 2-5. Do you know? I don't think the way we're playing now would beat those same 7 teams. I don't think we have been consistent playing this way, and suddenly everyone's just gotten better, and we're like playing good opposition. And you're like, oh well, they guess they were never good. To me, we were good. We had some issues, of course, that we're trying to figure out. But I think it's a little deeper than just like, oh, take this player out, put that player in there, or got to get this working, got to get that working. It really does feel like we just have been shaken a little bit, and we can't find that kind of that belief and that team synergy that we were operating on. You know, Tui and Close getting in the way of each other. They're not 2 young guys out there running, making a mistake. Yeah. Like they're a very experienced player and a quite experienced player trying to, outmark each other. There's a couple of times where that happened. There was some moments, not to call him out again, but Sam de Koning jogging along when there was that skied ball into the middle, and he was jogging along, and he should have been able to put on the gas to make that, if not a mark, then an uncontested possession. At the very least, should have continued his trajectory and made it a contested possession. But instead, it ended up being an uncontested possession for Carlton, because you could see, and you had so much time to watch it on the TV because of how high that ball went and how long it took to come down. And you're looking at SDK going, he's jogging along like literally in first gear, and he's probably gassed. You know what I mean? Like he's probably like totally understandable. I'm not a professional athlete. I couldn't do it. But I think it is the difference maker at the moment, is that just like that instinctive, like, go to that next level. I've got nothing left, but I'm going to keep going. And I don't think it's there across the whole team. There's some hands on hips. There's some hands on heads at very early stages of the game. So again, I'm rambling, and I do apologize to be so sort of, I guess I don't really have an answer of exactly what I think. Like that's what's in favor of the perspective you guys are coming from. I think there's a bit more logic there, and you can see a way out of it. Whereas with mine, I think it's a bit of both. It's a little more optimistic, but then at the same time, the pessimistic side is I can't really see a real, like, what exactly beyond just starting to play a bit better, more consistently for more of a game, getting some wins together, and that sort of belief coming back. But yeah, I guess to sum up, that's the thing that sticks in me, that stops me from like writing this year off, is just going, there was a massive change in there. Maybe we wouldn't have beaten Carlton the way they played. We could have played our best football this year, and maybe we wouldn't have beaten them. But I would still like to see it look the same. It's not always about who you lose to or how you lose. It's the way you look when you lose, or the way you look when you win. And I think Geelong were beating a lot of teams, and the way they looked was incredible. Like, they were looking really good. And so, yeah, I just do have this thing that sticks with me in the back of my mind of going, it's the same guys out there. It's the same guys out there that should have beaten Melbourne, that came really damn close to beating Melbourne when Melbourne were actually going pretty well. It's the same team that, that managed to get 7 in a row. So yeah, I don't know what you guys want. If we can just move on even, but that's kind of where I'm at in terms of the general feeling of this season going forward.
I think you're right in terms of like my definition of depth. It's not saying we don't have the players. It's saying that they've not yet fully actualized all of their powers yet. I think that there's the core of, the next flag side is there, whether that's in, later this year or whether it's in, in the next few years or whatever. I just think it's those times where you're up against it. I think a big factor, and I think even more so than like the midfield issues and stuff, is we have to find a way to get Tom Stewart back to being a weapon. Because like right now, our two leadership players, Dangerfield and Stewie, like on the weekend, Dangerfield is, coming back from injury and is not fully himself. And Stewart is being like held and restricted. So it's like, who lifts and sets that standard? But also I think too that I think it's a dangerous game for people to play of saying like, oh, dangerous. I think it's a silly game to play. The thing of like, oh, you only played this team, you only played that team. Well, we beat Brisbane, who are now everyone's, third or fourth flag favourite. We beat the Dogs, who have roared back into life. We beat Hawthorn, who, we've had. Yeah. So it's just, I think, and I just did the math, right? Since the flag in 2022, Geelong are 18 wins, 18 losses, 1 draw. We're currently 7th on the ladder. I think we're pretty much smack bang on balance the last 2 years, a team that sits right in the middle.
Yeah.
And our best is really, really good. But it's now developing. How do we find that footy more often than not? How do we, as you said, Sam, how do you keep reaching into the quiver and have arrow B, C, D, E, F, G, and on through? Because that was the thing about those sides 2022 and earlier, was just you had so many answers to find. And I think that there's lots of positives to take out of the game. I know it was crap to experience, and I really, I'm with you boys. I don't know if I said it already. I think, to me, that was the most disappointing loss of the season. Just because of that thing that we never really looked in the game. Like even the Gold Coast one, we actually led at quarter time.
Yeah.
Port GWS, we always made a run.
Yeah, that was a bit depressing. So look, I kind of hope that was, hitting the bottom of 2024. Kind of going, okay, that's something that we they won't want to let happen again. But what about you? Yeah, sorry, go, Johnny.
I was just going to say, if this is the worst it's going to get, it's not that bad.
No.
Like we're still 7th on the ladder. Still got every single possibility to make finals and make it a fair way up the ladder. Like there's nothing in our way to say that we can't make the finals and make it up to like 4th. I'm pretty sure we're still a possibility for that. We just it's just got to find a way. Maybe a game like this will burn a few people, a few players, and go, I don't want to play like that again. Got to lift. Got to find a next gear. So it's the interesting game next week. Shame about Dangerfield getting suspended for a tackle. Hopefully gets off.
Highly, highly, highly doubted myself.
Yeah, he's not in a certain different blue and white color that gets off for Brownlow. So we'll see what happens. He's not a favorite of the AFL anymore. So probably get 2 weeks.
And
I was just going to say, oh, sorry, you go.
No, you go. You go. Like I was. Oh yeah, you go.
I was just going to add to the, this idea of, like where the Cats are at, and like looking back at the VFL last year, the team, they went 8, 9, and 1 out of their 18 games, finished just outside the 8, and it was really patchy. Their season, it was like win, loss, win, loss, draw, win, loss. It sort of fluctuated a lot, and then this year they've come out and really put the foot down, you've seen massive development. I think it can't be underestimated. Like, the Cats are experiencing a little bit of churn from 2022. There's a lot of players that were part of that run. And I'm talking about Scott's run, not so much like the 2007 ones, but like, under Chris Scott, he's brought players in, developed them, and now they're either gone or they're retiring, or they're at that retirement age. So there's going to be names, let's be honest, there will be names in this team and in the VFL who make a handful of starts for the Cats and do not feature long term. That happened in the early days of Chris Scott. There's lots of names. Remember George Holland Smiths and Tom Ruggles and Billy Smets and who at the time you go, oh, there's something about this player or that player, and they don't pan out. But you work your way through, you find your solutions, you keep drafting, you keep bringing players in free agency and trade. And I don't think this is the first time that they have reconstructed under Chris Scott. And I just think right now, we used to have a couple of players, namely Joel Selwood, who was exceptionally good at helping. And I don't know, it's crazy to think he's underrated. But I was having a discussion with someone. People were saying, oh, is it Dustin Martin or Dangerfield, the best player of the last era? And I'm like, geez, Selwood gets a rough deal. When you look at what he did in his career, he's never in those conversations. And that's fine. But I think his importance was so massive, and I just think it's exciting. As much as you can have disappointing results like this, and I don't think it was only veteran players. Like, it was a mix. It was like across the board. There were players, young players, old players, players in between who had rough nights. I think, I like you said, Sambo, we were playing really well at the start of the year. I don't think it was a matter of who we played. I just think it's a matter of, get back to feeling good. Remember that we talked about in 2021? We're like, God, some of these dudes don't look like they are enjoying their footy. And I feel like we've seen a bit of that.
They'll have a blast. 2022. Massive.
Only the second half, though.
Fun. Yeah.
Because remember, early on, we were saying the same thing in 2022. We were like 5-4 after 9 games. We're going, man, they don't seem like they're like loving it out there. And then something switched. So do you chaps want to do some votes and talk some player stuff? Yeah, go.
I would like to just mention one more thing, just because you touched on the midfield, Jake, and I think it's really interesting that's just what people keep throwing to. The ruck, the midfield. That's Geelong's problem, the ruck, the midfield. But it's so, like, ambiguous. It's so, like, vague and, like, well, what do you mean? What about the midfield? Because we won center clearances. So, like, like, yeah, I don't know. It's just it's one of those things that frustrates me a little bit, that I think, and I don't necessarily have the specifics to nail it down either, but I think I feel more confident being on the track of our defensive efforts off the ball is more what the issue is than our on ball abilities. Like, we've got players like Tom Atkins. Parfit isn't in the side at the moment, but Tom Atkins can lay 11 tackles in a game, and then for whatever reason can lay 5 in this game. And I think a lot of it's structural. I would never question Tom Atkins' work rate. I think he's one of about 3 or 4 Cats that never works any less than 110% for the whole game. But I think his work rate isn't enough to account for a lack of structure off the ball. And I think there's some stats that are really, like, interesting to look at in that way, combined with the fact that we won center clearances, right? So midfield, oh, it's awful. Hit ruck, awful. We did get beaten in the ruck, but only, I think, 10. It's a significant number, but it's not. Sorry, 8
hit-outs, 43 to 35. Yeah,
8 hit-outs was the difference, and yet we won the center clearances. We were up on our average. They were up on their center clearance average, but we still beat them in the center clearances. But then you look at our tackles inside 50, which is 8 to 22, uh, which is pretty shocking. And then if you this isn't exactly the way it works, but if you want to look at your inside 50s combined with your scores, combined with the tackles inside 50, and imagine it kind of as if you go inside 50, and if you don't get a score, then presumably there's a turnover to the opposition, whether it's because it went out on the full or there's a stoppage or whatever. And that results in the opportunity for a tackle. So we operated at less than 50% inside 50 efficiency. And it left at about, I think it was 22 inside 50s without a score. And of those 22 scoreless inside 50s, we only laid 8 tackles. Right? Do you know what I mean? So we got a score off less than 50%, but we laid a tackle off less than a quarter of our inside 50s. Compared to Carlton, who were operating at a much higher efficiency. Like, they scored a lot more off their inside 50s. 62.1% inside 50 efficiency. And they laid 22 tackles. So they laid a tackle on almost half, on its way to half of their inside 50s. And I feel like those kind of stats are the ones that are making way more of a difference than just clearance numbers. The fact that
It's also, I would put more emphasis around stoppage clearances as well,
yes,
because that's where we got absolutely, well, not absolutely, but we got pretty well beaten there, 35 to 22. So yeah, I agree with you, Sam. Like, you can't just focus on center clearances as going, that's Cat's midfield, no good, Ruck's no good. It's like, well, we won that. It's more what's happening around the ground.
and specifically when you look at that stoppage versus, so we're not, when we turn the ball over, when they regain possession there forward 50, we're not laying enough pressure and turning it over. And then their uncontested possession numbers, they had 230. They were up like 18 uncontested possessions. We were down quite a bit, but even our year average is not great. But so I think our center clearance numbers are good, because when we go back to the center clearance, we have a clear structure. You have time before and so you can go back to exactly where you need to be to reset. Whereas when it's a stoppage in our back half or in their back half, or it's they're kicking out, we've kicked it out on the full, or it's a behind, we're not structuring up. And I think we're dealing with way more inside 50s. So this goes back to Tom Stewart as well. Like, he's being tagged, all that stuff. But I think he's also not getting helped by the defensive pressure and defensive efforts around the ground. And he's probably dealing with way more inside 50s than he's dealt with before. I think I should have written it down, but I was looking up deeper stats across the seasons before, and if you looked at inside 50 numbers, so I was trying to get the averages. I wasn't able to collect the averages, but just when I went on the site and looked at inside 50s across, I think since 2010, maybe, the top this year has 4 of the highest. So we've got the second highest, and then after that we've got 3 of the 15 highest inside 50s we've ever conceded since 2009 or 2010, I think it was. So as I said, I really wanted to get the averages because that would be more indicative, but I think it's still quite interesting that of 15 seasons, the 4 of the 15 highest inside 50s were all in this year, and there was 1 from 2022. And it was almost mirror image the opposite of that when you went to our inside 50s. I think we had 1 this year of our top 15 games with inside 50s. And 2022 was, I think, had 6 of the, like, it was almost half of the of our best inside 50 numbers came from 2022. So like I said, averages would have been good, but I think Tom Stewart's tag isn't being helped by the fact that we're just allowing a sheer number of deliveries coming back the other way and just not structuring up at all.
It's a big difference too to have, say Dangerfield, Clark, Atkins, or whoever, structuring up, around a centre clearance. Sam de Koning in the ruck, like
Mm.
it's not like he's played a bunch in the ruck. It's not like Sam de Koning is a young ruck who's been thrown to the wolves. It's like he's a key defender who's been thrown into the ruck. Like, so I totally agree with you. Like, that's the conclusion I would draw. You win the centre clearances because everyone knows where they're meant to be. Everyone's set up.
Yep.
But it's around the ground. And this isn't the only game you would see that, where
No.
I think you go back to a game. I'm trying to think who it was against. Might have been in the first half against Richmond, where the Tigers just got someone absolutely loose and free at a stoppage inside forward 50, and they snapped a goal. And Atkins and Holmes were both standing there, basically being unable to impact the play. And I think you saw a lot of that. I think that was the times where we looked most glaringly sort of outmatched was around the ground in those stoppages, where it's like, I just think there's still a bit of learning curve and understanding to be gained from this current group about how do we set up here if it's a stoppage on the wing, and how do we make sure the defensive part of the midfield, and that's not just tackling, that's just like where to position
Yeah, where to
to
stand.
make sure they don't get it's basic things. And I think that's what Chris Scott probably talks about when he's talking about it's simple things, we've just got to fix them.
Mm.
It's simple, it's not easy. It's very
Yeah.
simple, I'm sure, to walk through in training. All right, this is how we set up. This is what we're going to do in this situation, that situation. Different thing when there's like 89,000 people at the MCG and you're 3 goals down early and you're playing on Cripps, Walsh, etc., who are absolutely firing. And I think I think that sort of hits the nail on the head in terms of breaking those different stats down. And actually, we talked about on the night when we were watching the game, I was just reading here on the AFL website, Geelong struggled to transition the ball all night, 31 of 45 defensive 50 chains being intercepted for a return of 8-5-53. And we talked about, remember, Geelong scoring off turnover. That was such a big part of
the number
our
one team
success.
turning off, scoring off turnover.
And so it's just like a couple of our main things have sort of dried up, and I think it can be fixed. I think there are things they can work on. And another thing, though, I will say, I thought on the night, and I thought this was a fair call from the commentary team. I don't often agree with them, but they were talking about the difference in bodies Geelong had at stoppages versus what Carlton had. And, it's not like for like, and this is why I keep going back to saying to people like who are going, bring the VFL guys in. You're just bringing more of the same in terms of those are also young guys trying to develop. Those are also guys like Mitch Hardy, who was brought in the mid-season draft at a mature age, because at this point he hasn't been able to crack the AFL. And I look at Mitch Hardy and go, I don't know if he'd be physically up for it or not. It's
Sean
not
Manor
like there's these,
well.
Well, yeah, and man, I just think
it's
it's people thinking that there's these guys just lurking, ready to burst in the VFL. I didn't honestly. I don't think there was anyone who played VFL on the weekend. Maybe Brandon Parfitt, and he had a good second half, but a very quiet first half. I don't really think there was anyone in that VFL lineup that we could have brought in that would have made a tangible difference. I think it is much more set up and understanding, and it's lapses in concentration. There you go. You could talk again there about depth. Our concentration and our ability to be disciplined in our assignments seems a little shallow at the moment for whatever reason. It's just
and
there's fade outs, I guess.
and as I said, you've got a team in Carlton who's got all of their midfield. They're at the peak of their powers, and they can see premiership glory in the future. So they're playing, running on the top of the ground, playing at their absolute best, week in, week out, having a great time. and it's hard to beat. We saw it in 2022. No one beat the Cats the second half of the year because sort of premiership glory, running on the top of the ground, players playing at the absolute peak of their powers. It's a tough thing to stop, and it's also a very difficult thing to get out of a run of bad form. You can't just click your finger next week. It's going to be perfectly fine. As much as we all hope it will be, and always think that each and every single week. Let's go. Yeah, we can turn this around next week against the Bombers. No problem. They should be able to. Professional athletes, but as you said, Jake, they can train it on the training field and do all that. But as soon as you go out in front of a massive crowd, all baying for your blood and whatnot against you, it makes it a little bit more difficult. And then also putting on the pressure of, we've been playing bad, we need to win a game soon. It'll be tough, especially for young guys who are still learning how to play the game.
I'll just say too, from the VFL, I was speaking specifically on ball and midfield. I would have said I would have liked to see Lawson Humphreys get a debut. Would have been a tough situation to do it in, but I think he would have brought something that we at times lacked, which was very slick ball movement and speed off the half back line.
Maybe next week.
I think his presence. Yeah, I think his presence could possibly free Max Holmes up to play more in the midfield.
There was a lot of
halfback.
talk in the presses by, I think, Dangerfield and Chris Scott about bringing in some fresh blood over the next few weeks. So maybe the fans will get what they're asking for, and all those VFL superstars that are come in and bring us a premiership.
Just to touch on what you were talking about, Jake. Sorry, I was going to say before we move on to votes and stuff. It was our second lowest score from defensive half and our lowest score from turnover for the season.
That doesn't surprise me. And then like you look at some numbers that really like they just paint the picture, and it's stuff like the tackles inside 50, but then just the overall tackles 80 to 66. It was one of those games where you're just like, is it possible for us to get a player with the ball in any sort of space? It was just like constantly swarmed. Like it was like, if I didn't hate watching it so much, I would have been impressed by what Carlton did. It's just that it really, yeah. It's a Cats podcast, people. All right, let's do best on ground votes, because we can branch out into some other stuff if we didn't get to touch on it in the Patreon section. We don't have to be bound to only the Chaps Chat stats. So best on ground votes, I'll lead us off here. I'm going Jeremy Cameron with 1 vote. I just thought he was impressive in a number of areas, showed a lot of poise. Would have loved for him to kick a couple more goals, but his poise and class with the footy is pretty remarkable. Ollie Dempsey gets my 2, career high in disposals, kicks a goal. Still probably has some decision-making stuff to work on at times, but geez, for a player in his 3rd season at the club and his first real year as a starter, I've been so impressed. Glad I bought Stonks at the start of the year. And Max Holmes gets my 3. Johnny.
Wife was watching a game with us, and just about Ollie Dempsey. First game she's watched of the Cats. First game she's watched like this year. First time she sees Ollie Dempsey. She's like, oh, he's a really good player. Like, yep. So he's going to be a good player. If my wife, who barely watches the AFL, can spot a good player who's really young, then he's going to be a pretty good player. Mine and votes are exactly the same as yours, Jake. Exactly the same. Cameron 1, Ollie 2, and Max Holmes 3.
Love it. Sambo, what do you got?
Similar, same but different. I have Holmes 3 and Dempsey at 2 as well. But I gave my 1 to Brian Myers.
Nice.
Probably not the game that most people would talk about for him. Like, I think, I've sometimes missed him when other people had him in their votes. But I thought he did pretty well, like effort wise. Even when we were down and out, he didn't make the right call all the time. But neither did Dempsey. Neither did Holmes. Neither did Tom Stewart a couple of times. So some gaffes went with the territory. But he was team high tackles. I love my tackles, and when you can lay 9 tackles, he got pretty much laid the best, almost a sixth of the whole team's tackles. So and he also 369 meters gained, 23 disposals. I thought it was a good effort from Myers in a not a terribly glorified performance, but that's kind of what I liked about it. It was one of those games where he still put in the effort, even though he couldn't get into the score involvements as much or do anything super showy or attention grabby. I thought he put in a good effort.
Nice.
I like that. I'll just say I did put out a tweet on Twitter, would you believe, about Max Holmes. I just thought I'd share this one with people who maybe didn't see the tweet. Just on Max Holmes, and that is comparing 2011 Patrick Dangerfield to 2024 Max Holmes, because that is for each player the 4th year of their career in the AFL. Year 4, Patrick Dangerfield averaged 17 disposals. Max Holmes is averaging 25.5. Dangerfield averaged 4 clearances. Holmes averaging 3.5. Dangerfield 2.9 marks. Holmes 5.4. Dangerfield 3.2 tackles. Holmes 3.2. And goals. Dangerfield averaged 1 goal a game. Holmes is averaging 0.7. So pretty cool. And look, ultimately, I know they've started, Dangerfield played more up forward when he started. Holmes is playing more down back. But the comparisons have been made before that Holmes could be that sort of explosive, difference-making midfield type player as his career progresses. So I just thought, for shits and giggles, it might be fun to look at both of them and where they are in their respective 4th years of development. But that is it, chaps. That is your blooming lot on the free part of the show. We're going to go now to the Patreon section. And as we did last week, I'm going to quickly play you out with the halftime horse, because it's halftime for us, even if it might be full-time for you on the public part of the thing. So let's bring in the horse. Come on in, halftime horse.
You get your cordial, you get your lollies, a spray from the coach. Lollies, absolutely.
Appreciate it. And until next time, go Cats.
Go Cats.
That's what halftime's about.